Welcome to the 200th episode of Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast, bringing you conversations between our community's most notable creatives. In this segment, we are absolutely thrilled to bring you a conversation between Meg and Hilma Wolitzer, both Syosset residents from the past who have become very popular novelists.
Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Syosset Conversations in celebration of Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast's 200th episode. And today's this conversation is going to be between
Hilma Wolitzer.
And I'm Meg Wolitzer.
And you are both from, or you've lived in Woodbury for quite some time. You have,
in Syosset. In Syosset.
Syosset. How long did you live in Syosset for?
Well, Meg was 3 months old when we moved there, and I think she moved out way before we did.
All right. So I have a question for you. So you're both published authors, have written lots of books. My question is, at what point did you realize that one another were storytellers? Was there a point that you saw it in each other, or did it take some time?
Well, since I'm a lot older than she is, I was a storyteller before she was, and I recognized her as a natural born storyteller very early on when she was just a child. And she began writing very early. She was quite precocious. I was a late bloomer. I mean, I wrote bad poetry when I was a child. Bad poems, I can't even call it poetry. But I didn't publish my first novel until I was 44, and Meg was
22. So the joke was that my grandmother was going to have her first book at 88, but that did not happen.
She missed her deadline.
Yeah, you have like that really nice double even number thing going for both of you. So what kind of stories did Meg tell when she was younger?
Well, I think she was writing stories, or I think you dictated a story.
Yeah, I had a teacher in first grade, Mrs. Gerby, who would invite me up to her desk to dictate stories to her, and she would write them down. And my mother saved them for some time. And, they're about a child who gets to be an astronaut, or somebody who changes her name to all the names of the children in the grade. And my teacher just wrote everything down, and which was great. And I definitely thought in stories. I told myself stories on the way to school. I had a kind of serial novel that I told myself in pieces every day as I walked to school. So yeah, storytelling, I think we're hardwired for it.
Which elementary school did you go to, Meg?
Well, first I was at Southwoods until the
South Grove,
sorry. It's a long time, until the middle of second grade. And then I went to Willits, Alice P. Willits.
We actually lived on Southwood Circle. So
that's right.
That's why she mixed it up.
So you're like in walking distance to where the library is now. Was the library still in town at that point?
No, it was a very small library, and it was a town without a bookstore. And I was starting to write, and I had never met another writer. There was no bookstore. There was no real writing community for me. The big library, when it was built, was just a boon. It was magnificent. I still remember it fondly. I wish I had a library like that, a public library like that in the city.
Yeah, I see it on your screen behind you. My sister and I both worked at the Syosset Public Library, at this library, as pages. We had a job.
Did?
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yes, I was a page. I think Reed, who's still at the library, is he still at the library? Reed was a page and
Reed
like
Goldsmith.
and was a
Reed
head.
Goldsmith is actually a trustee of the library.
Oh, really? Not a page with me.
But he was he could have been a page with you.
He was like head page. He was like the
teacher.
Yes, he was great. And I worked under him. I mean, I think he was like the head page. And my sister had been a page, and I think she worked with him as well. So I, learned to shelf books, take the flag down, and show movies where I think we got extra paid to show movies on Friday nights. And once I remember the movie burned in the in the film projector. It was Tell Me That You Love Me, Judy Moon with Liza Minnelli. I mean, it just got sort of mangled in the projector. But I loved being in the library. I absolutely loved it.
It was a place we could go when we didn't have a lot of money, that was free, and where everybody really enjoyed themselves. The whole family went. It was a ritual for us. I think we went on Friday nights and we had a really good time. And also I think back now, I think I had some special privileges being a writer. I think that some of the new books were put aside for me, but don't tell anybody.
I mean, we're not going to tell anybody. It's just on the podcast. Who's going to hear this?
Who's going to listen?
Some of our
Who's
listeners.
going to listen? No one.
No one will care anymore, I suppose. But having the library there was great. And I remember we had a wonderful children's library named Adrian Flukiger, way before your time. And she was terrific. She found books for the kids. She encouraged them to read. It became a very welcoming, friendly place. And I was often the tallest person in the children's section, just looking around for books for my kids. And I remember once a phase in Meg's life where she really changed. I was on my way to the library by myself to pick up books for both kids. And Meg opened the door and just yelled, "And no books with talking animals," which I guess she was on to human characters at that point.
I guess so.
Meg, when did you notice your mother was a storyteller? Obviously, she started before you, but was there like a point that it just sort of, that you just sort of noticed it and it just sort of came together?
Well, she had sold her first short story to the Saturday Evening Post in 1966. And I was 6 or 7 years old. And I remember it really, really well. I didn't know what this magazine was, but it was a big deal. And I remember Hemingway was on the cover, a drawing of Hemingway, right?
That's right.
And it was a big, oversized magazine, a big, glossy, important magazine. And she had a huge spread of, a short story called Today a Woman Went Mad in the Supermarket, which ended up being the title of her recent collection. And I was just filled with pride. And I didn't read this story then. I read it later, too young, I think, but not to understand it, but still not too young to feel great pride. So early on, I knew she cared about characters and stories, and she really kind of transferred that to me.
And then there was the practical side. Selling a story actually changed my life. We were living in Syosset with one car, which my husband took to work every day, and he kept 2 jobs because of finances. And I had to walk everywhere with the kids. I had to walk them to the supermarket. They walked to school. Luckily, it was within walking distance. But when I sold that first story, there was a Rambler dealer on Jericho Turnpike. I went right to that Rambler dealer and bought a station wagon the minute I found out about the sale of the story. So that writing really bought me my freedom in a way.
That's interesting that you say that, because I know a lot of people feel that reading gives them freedom as well. Could you think about a book that maybe you remember borrowing from the library that just you really, really loved?
Yeah, I think a book that we both loved, which was Charlotte's Web, E.B. White. And we did read it in the library edition first. And I think Meg and I read it together and we both wept and were very moved by it. And then years later, I was giving a reading in Boston and Meg was in college and came, where were you?
At Brown, I think.
Where you were Brown at that point, and you came down to stay with me at the hotel, and I bought her own copy of Charlotte's Web then.
That's really lovely. And Charlotte's Web is still a very popular book in our children's collection, even though Meg does have talking animals in it. So this must
I know, I
before
did,
the incident.
I made an exception for those talking animals. Pig and spider, A-okay with me. Well, I think libraries are tremendously important and vital to a culture, and this library is terrific. And I remember the groundbreaking of the library, and it was an important event, I think, in my family's life, very much. It changed everything. It was a place we went after school. It was a place that employed me and my sister. It was a place that I really connected with librarians and sat in a corner and read and read.
I may have given my first reading there as well from my own work. And there's a wonderful organization called Poets and Writers. It's a nonprofit organization that supports writers, especially at the beginning of their careers. And I believe the library paid me $25 to do the reading, and Poets and Writers doubled it to $50. And it really made a difference. Gas for that Rambler.
Yeah, gas was less expensive back then, but I mean, when you balance out, just it was a while ago. But thank you so much. This was really lovely. Did you have a favorite restaurant in the area, just to kind of close it out with something again unique? What's your favorite?
There were two of them, I think. I'm
Yeah,
going to say
go for it.
Monero's. Monero's Steakhouse. Is it still there?
Unfortunately, Monero's is not. However, it did hold out for quite a while, and I loved it as well.
And then there was a diner, and the diner was called On Parade, but unfortunately the sign maker was a little bit dyslexic, and the sign said On Parday.
And they didn't change it for
And
some
they never
time.
changed it.
So my friends and I called it On Parday. But there was a restaurant that was very important to me where I had my Sweet 16, which was Mahjong. It was incredible. A lot of people just had parties there. It was a sort of big, splashy restaurant where they had a poo-poo platter and all kinds of things. And
where was it?
it was, I think, I'm going to be wrong.
I think they're on
like South Oyster Bay Road or
South
something?
Oyster Bay Road.
Which is, I know where the library, I don't know, but when you air this, people will let you know where the Mahjong restaurant was. It's all kind of a blur, but the family who ran it was lovely, and I remember it really well. In fact, I read a blog post, I think, by the Chin family. I think the daughter was older and the son was in my grade, and they ran it for a really long time. And I think it was a popular place for some time.
And Monero's was an expensive treat.
Monero's was fabulous. And I think that was the first place I ever had like twice baked potatoes. And
yes,
so
me too. And lobster tails. And they had sawdust on the butcher floor. I remember it really well. Yeah. And Roquefort dressing and salad. It's all coming back like Proust.
I remember driving in my new Rambler to De Viga's to do shopping for the family. Does De Viga's still exist?
That I am not sure of. I have to look that up.
Yeah. I don't think so, Mom.
Probably.
I don't think
I
so.
barely exist at this point. It's been many, many years. I had several friends who worked at the library. Ray Israeloff, I don't know if you know.
Actually, yes, Ray did work while I was still at the Ray still worked there when I was at the library. So yes, Ray was very much beloved.
How about Pam Trackman and Laura Trackman?
So Pam Trackman is actually a full-time librarian at the library, and Lori had been one of our trustees for quite a while, and they still live in the area, and Pam works there as a librarian.
I'm still in touch with Lori. Lori and Al and my husband and I were good friends.
And Elaine.
And then Elaine Rifkin, who then became Elaine Gaynor. She was there.
I can't remember if I've met her, but I do know the name.
They was among our earliest friends in Syosset.
Well, this was amazing. I am now craving Monero's, which is very unfortunate because it is no longer there. And we're just so happy to have the two of you, both writers, both from the area, to share your story and your just very unique conversation about your time as storytellers in the Syosset community.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, thank you so much, Jessica.
So once again, this was Jessica with Syosset Conversations for the 200th episode of Turn the Page podcast, and our guests were
Meg
Hilma
Wolitzer.
Wolitzer.
You go, Mother.
Age before beauty. Hilma Wolitzer.
Meg Wolitzer.
and we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.